Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We've taken quite a journey, haven't we? We've gone through the fundamentals of nanotechnology, we've looked at the incredible tools that make it all possible, and in our last session, we really dug into the tough questions about risk and regulation. But today we look forward. We're looking to the horizon, at the future. And to help guide us through what's coming next, we're joined once again by our expert. It is so great to have you back with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a genuine pleasure to be here to discuss this important topic.
That agenda looks great. It really feels like we're shifting gears from what nanotechnology is to what it can do. So let's just jump right in. What would you say is the single biggest shift happening right now? The one that's really pushing the boundaries of this entire field?
That's the perfect way to put it. The whole field is making a pivot. For years, the main goal was to make materials that were, smaller, stronger, or lighter, basically passive upgrades. But now the real frontier is all about making them smarter. We're moving away from static materials and toward active, dynamic systems that can actually sense their surroundings, process information, make choices, and carry out complex tasks all on their own. It's less about creating better things and more about building functional machines at a molecular scale.
Wow, that is a fascinating shift in thinking. So let's start with the one idea that always sounds like it's pulled straight out of a sci-fi movie: nanorobotics. When scientists in the field talk about nanobots, what are they actually imagining? What are they trying to build? It's a concept that definitely fires up the imagination, but the science behind it is, I think, even more amazing. When we talk about nanorobotics, it's really important to be clear that we're not just shrinking down industrial robots. We're building machines from the molecule up. These are devices where the components themselves, the motors, the sensors, the little cargo bays, are at the nanometer scale. And the ultimate inspiration for this actually comes from biology. Your body is already packed with trillions of these incredible nanomachines. Ribosomes, for example, they're basically molecular 3D printers that read your genetic code to build proteins. ATP synthase is this tiny rotary motor that spins around to generate energy for your cells. So we're really just trying to learn from nature's 4-billion-year-old playbook to build our own.
That's incredible, to think our own cells are the model for this. So let's talk about that. What's the ultimate dream scenario for these nanobots in medicine compared to where we actually are today in 2025?
The vision, well, it's genuinely world-changing. The dream is to have a swarm of programmable nanobots that you could inject into a person's bloodstream. They could be programmed to hunt down cancer cells just by recognizing specific proteins on their surface. And then, bam, they release a powerful drug payload right onto the tumor, leaving all the healthy cells completely alone. Or you can imagine bots that act like tiny surgeons, meticulously scraping plaque from artery walls to prevent heart attacks, or delivering growth factors to repair damaged tissue atom by atom. That's the end goal. But as of 2025, we have to be honest with ourselves. We are in the very, very early stages. We can build some simple molecular motors that spin around in a petri dish, sure, and we've made some basic switches. But the human bloodstream? It's a chaotic, turbulent superhighway, not some calm lab environment. The challenges are just immense. How do you power them when they're too small for batteries? How do you steer them against the flow of blood? How do you even talk to them? And maybe the biggest question of all, how do you stop the body's own incredibly powerful immune system from seeing them as invaders and just wiping them out instantly? Solving all of that, well, that's the monumental task for the next generation of scientists.
So it's not just about building the bot, it's about building it with incredible precision and then figuring out how to even control it. This actually leads perfectly to a technique you mentioned before, DNA origami. What on earth is that?
DNA origami is such an elegant solution to that very construction problem. It's what we call a bottom-up nanofabrication technique, and it basically hijacks the natural properties of DNA. So we all know the famous base pairing rule. A binds to T and C binds to G. Well, that pairing is incredibly predictable and reliable. The technique works by taking a really long single strand of DNA, often from a harmless virus, and that acts as a scaffold. Then scientists use software to design hundreds of short little staple strands. Each staple is engineered to grab onto two specific distant points on that long scaffold. So when you mix them all together in a solution and heat it up, the staples go and find their spots and act like tiny molecular clamps, pulling that long strand together and folding it into a precise, pre-programmed 3D shape, a box, a triangle, a tiny gear, whatever you designed. It's almost like having a very long piece of string and hundreds of tiny preset magnets that know exactly where to attach to fold it all into a perfect little sculpture.
That is a brilliant analogy. Using the very code of life as a building material is just mind-blowing. So why is this considered so revolutionary? What's its main job?
It's a revolution because of the insane level of precision it gives us. Its main use isn't really as a final product itself, but more as a nanoscale scaffolding tool. You can think of it like a molecular pegboard. See, once you've folded their DNA into a specific shape, like a hollow box, you can then use it as a framework to organize other functional parts with almost atomic accuracy. You can design the DNA to have specific chemical hooks on its surface. And on one hook, you can attach a protein that targets cancer cells. On another, you attach a quantum dot that lights up for imaging. And inside the box, you can tuck away a drug molecule. All of a sudden, you've built a highly sophisticated drug delivery vehicle. This is how we can start to piece together the complex components we need for those nanorobots, or create new biosensors, or even arrange catalysts for chemical reactions. It gives us a way to build with intent at the nanoscale. Okay, so from biological code to digital code, the next area on our agenda is the fusion of AI and nanotechnology, which I see the source material calls a synergy of two revolutions. That is a very powerful statement. How exactly is this fusion speeding up discovery? No, that's not an exaggeration at all. It's the engine pushing the entire field forward right now. This fusion creates this incredible feedback loop that's accelerating every single part of the process. And it happens in three main ways. Let's start with materials discovery. For decades, finding new materials was just a slow, painful process of trial and error. But now, machine learning algorithms can comb through these massive databases of every material we've ever studied and find hidden patterns. They can predict the properties of a hypothetical nanomaterial before anyone has ever even made it. And what's even more exciting is generative AI, the same kind of stuff that creates text or images, can now invent completely new material structures from scratch, optimized for a specific job, like being a super efficient catalyst for green hydrogen or having the perfect optical properties for a new kind of screen.
So AI is acting like a creative partner here, not just crunching data, but actually dreaming up new materials from scratch. That's incredible. What's the second way it's accelerating things?
Exactly. And that flows right into the second point, accelerated simulation. This is an absolute game changer. To know if a new material design will actually work, you have to simulate how its atoms will behave. This means doing these incredibly complex quantum mechanical calculations, stuff like density functional theory, that can take a supercomputer months to run for just one material. It's a huge bottleneck. What AI can do is learn to approximate those simulations. You train a model on the results of thousands of these slow, accurate simulations. The AI starts to learn the underlying physics. And once it's trained, it can predict the properties of a new material in minutes or hours instead of months. This lets a research team screen, say, 10,000 potential candidates virtually, find the 10 most promising ones, and then go into the lab to make them.
So it's like a fast-forward button for the entire R&D process. That brings us to the third point on the slide, automated nanofabrication, or what the source calls self-driving labs. What are those?
A self-driving lab is the physical result of all this AI-driven acceleration. It closes the loop. In a normal lab, a researcher has an idea, they run an experiment, they analyze the data, and then they decide what to do next. That process can take weeks. A self-driving lab automates the whole thing, the entire scientific method. The AI, the very same one that designed the material and simulated its properties, is plugged directly into robotic lab equipment. The AI will hypothesize, okay, I think this combination of chemicals will create a nanoparticle with the properties I want. It then tells a robotic arm to mix the chemicals. Another automated system, maybe an electron microscope, then characterizes what was made. The AI instantly analyzes that data, learns from the result, whether it worked or not, refines its hypothesis, and immediately starts the next experiment. It creates this fully automated closed loop of hypothesis, experiment, and discovery that can run 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's a system built to accelerate research at a speed we've just never had before.
A 24/7 discovery loop. That is just an incredible concept. All right, let's shift dimensions now, quite literally. The next topic you mentioned was 4D printing, which sounds like it adds a whole other layer of complexity. So just to get us all on the same page, maybe you can answer the most basic question here. In 4D printing, what exactly is the fourth dimension?
It's a great question, and the answer is actually pretty intuitive. The fourth dimension is time. We all get 3D printing, right? It makes a static object in 3 spatial dimensions. Well, 4D printing takes that a step further. It uses really sophisticated multi-material printers to build an object out of smart materials. The key is that the object is printed in one initial shape, but it's pre-programmed to transform into a different shape or to perform some kind of function over time once it gets hit with an external trigger. So you're not just printing an object's structure, you're actually printing its future behavior.
So you're embedding behavior right into the material itself. How do smart nanomaterials make that possible? And what are some of the potential real-world uses for this?
Oh, nanomaterials are often the secret sauce here. They're what make the printing ink smart. By engineering materials at the nanoscale, we can design them to react in very specific ways to triggers like heat, or light, or water, or a change in pH. For example, by carefully embedding certain polymer nanoparticles inside a 3D printed object, engineers can control exactly which parts will expand, which will contract, and how the whole thing will bend or fold when it's activated. And the applications, they're vast and really exciting. Think about a medical stent for a blocked artery. You could 4D print it as a thin, compressed rod, which makes for an easy, minimally invasive surgery. Then, once it's in place, the body's own natural heat acts as the trigger, causing it to expand into its final, complex, life-saving shape. Or imagine a bridge built with adaptive materials that can sense the unique vibrations of an earthquake in real time and automatically stiffen their internal structure to prevent a collapse. You can even connect this back to AI. The materials that AI invents could be the smart inks that these 4D printers use to create these dynamic structures. That's the power of printing behavior itself. From self-assembling implants to self-healing buildings, the potential is just astounding. But a lot of these concepts can feel very futuristic. So let's bring it back to the present for a second. How is the next generation of scientists and engineers, students in universities right now, actually working to make these ideas a reality?
This is such a crucial piece of the innovation ecosystem. A field moving this fast absolutely relies on the next generation to turn this cutting-edge knowledge into something tangible. University capstone projects, graduate theses, student-led startups, that's the crucible where this really happens. And it's happening right now in innovation hubs all over. This table here gives a perfect snapshot of that pipeline. On the left, in the research column, you see students tackling the exact futuristic topics we've been talking about. A final year engineering project might be designing a DNA origami vehicle for mRNA delivery, which directly applies that nanoscale pegboard idea we discussed. Another student might be using AI to discover nanocatalysts for green hydrogen, using those very AI tools we just covered. Then on the right, you see how that research plants the seeds for new businesses. The student who worked on AI might go on to launch a startup that provides materials discovery as a service to big pharmaceutical companies. Another, maybe tapping into regional strength like forestry, might build a company based on their research into nanocellulose water filters. It just shows that direct, powerful line from classroom theory straight to real-world impact.
It's really inspiring to see that direct line from the lab to the marketplace. As we head into our final section, I'd love to take a step back for a moment. We have covered an incredible amount of ground in this series. For everyone who's been with us the whole way, could you maybe recap the key pillars of our nanotechnology journey? Of course, it has been a big journey, and it really does boil down to 4 fundamental pillars. First, we started with the why, really understanding why the rules of physics change at the nanoscale, why quantum effects and that huge increase in surface area matter so much. Second, we explored the how. We looked at the top-down and bottom-up fabrication techniques we use to build things at this tiny scale and the powerful microscopes we need just to see them. Third was the what. We surveyed that huge library of nanomaterials, everything from carbon nanotubes to quantum dots, and their current applications. And finally, and so critically, we addressed the caution. We confronted the vital importance of responsible innovation by talking about the potential risks, the ethics, and the regulations that have to guide a technology this powerful.
That is a fantastic summary that really brings all the pieces together. So with that whole journey in mind, what is the ultimate promise of this field? What's the grand vision that's driving all this incredible research?
The ultimate promise is to give humanity something that is, for all intents and purposes, an atomic-level construction kit. For all of human history, we've been limited to the materials we could find and refine. Nanotechnology is about moving beyond that entirely. It's about designing and building the perfect solution from the atoms up. Imagine designing a molecule that can just pull carbon dioxide right out of the atmosphere and, with a little sunlight, efficiently turn it into clean fuel. Or a nano device that can patrol your body, find a single faulty gene that causes a disease, and just repair it on the spot. That's the level of precise control over matter we're aiming for. It's about engineering custom solutions to our biggest challenges.
That is a profound goal. But with that promise, of course, come immense challenges. So let's get very specific. As we're sitting here today, July 4th, 2025, what would you say is the single biggest challenge that's holding the field back?
That is the key question for right now. For me, the single biggest challenge is the growing gap between our ability to design something and our ability to deploy it. With AI, like we've talked about, we can now design a brilliant new nanoparticle for a solar cell on a computer in a single afternoon. But proving it's safe for the environment, getting it through all the complex regulations, and then, and this is the big one, figuring out how to manufacture it by the ton, not just by the milligram, affordably and reliably, that can still take a decade and $1 billion. Closing that massive gap between the digital drawing board and real-world, scalable, safe manufacturing, that's the great challenge of our time.
And really, that challenge points us right to where this is all going. The future of nanotechnology isn't just about making things smaller anymore, it's about making them smarter. It's about integration. As this quote suggests, the fusion of nanotechnology with artificial intelligence, with synthetic biology, with quantum computing, that is where the next revolution is going to happen. We are learning to build systems that are more dynamic, more functional, and more sustainable, literally from the atoms up. The innovations of the next decade, driven by this convergence and brought to life by a new generation, will absolutely reshape our world in ways we're only just starting to imagine. Building a smarter world from the atoms up. That is a truly powerful note to end on. Thank you so much for guiding us through this entire fascinating series. It has been absolutely incredible. And for our audience, our exploration of technology never stops. Be sure to tune in for our next series where we'll explore computer hardware, architecture, components, and modern systems. Thank you for joining us, and we invite you to subscribe to our channel, Tech, AI, and Beyond.